Welcome to the channel, or welcome back if you're returning. So you may note that I'm back to Oloro. The main reason is that I just don't like playing Zur. It feels like I'm playing Tricks or Necro Donate, an old school deck that used to use Necropotence just to draw permission and then ram a combo down your opponent's throat in the game. It's not a style of play that I like. It's exactly how Zur plays out, and I think it's totally unfun and uninteresting. So it's just the problem I have with Zur is that it's powerful but boring. Like, just bores the crap out of me. So I'm not gonna play it. I don't know what the deal is with my personality, but I find like an aggressive game-ending combo to be incredibly boring. I find a game that's slow and controlling and takes 30 turns to be incredibly fun and interesting. I guess it's just evidence that there's plenty of people who would say the exact opposite is true, and I guess it just shows that it's all a matter of personal taste. But I find lots of little decisions making points to be really intriguing, whereas the only decision you have to make is how fast I can kill them or how quickly. Like when the game just plays itself, I don't know. It's just not for me. So switch back to Oloro, and then I went ahead after having played Zur, though having some experience with a different version of the same colors. I decided to do a few things differently. There's one change in the mana base. We're up to 30 lands. I'm actually at 5 basic islands plus Colosseum and the rest. I also have I've also put recoil in the slot where the new Vindicate will go, because I need a placeholder to kind of feel out how well I like that. Although recoil is actually, in some cases, it's more flexible because you can hit lands, and it's much easier to fetch. So I actually, having been using this as a playtest, as a placeholder, I'm actually finding that I really like having recoil in here in general, and could actually decide to leave it in here and play the new Vindicate depending on how things go, but we'll see on that. Lastly, I've been playing against a guy named Eric, who is an offline playtest partner. I play with the paper version of this deck, and I found that in our games, what I really want in this deck is Tithing Needle. I actually have one offline, so I know how good it is. Actually, I feel like it belongs in this deck. I don't want to get into it too far, but basically, it's very easy to shut down creatures with this deck, and Tithing Needle shuts down the other problem, which is Planeswalker Commanders. It also, though, deals with creatures that Moat doesn't stop, like Name the Pain Artist. So I like having that ability, and it's so cheap and easy to get. It's also really good against one of the best commanders against this deck, which is in blue, and that's the Ready. And I'm going to run through a game against the Ready now. So if you take a look at, you can see why I want Tithing Needle on the deck. I really hate playing against this commander because basically a lot of times it comes down to, so anyway, I'm Oloro, he's the Ready. So a lot of times it comes down to, if they draw Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Mana Crypt, Ancient Tomb, into Artifact Ramp or whatever, and they slam the Ready on the table, a lot of times you can just lose a game on turn 2. They can actually play their commander on turn 1. One trick that they can use, which is really gross that nobody else really gets to use much of, is they can go first turn land, Lion's Eye Diamond commander, and then from there use the commander to find artifacts they can play, or find mana, and then quickly establish dominance of the game. It really sucks playing against that commander. Luckily, I actually have one of my few creatures. I have Confidant here. He puts a little bit of pressure on the Ready and buys me a little bit of time. And then I draw Enlightened Tutor. So at this point in the game, I would like to just win the game. I've got multiple counters. I've got mana advantage. I've got card advantage. And all I need to do right here is Enlightened Tutor for Tithing Needle, but it's not in the deck. So he goes to play a Metal Worker, which I counter, and then just like we were talking about, boom, Lion's Eye Diamond, the Ready, instant Precursor Golem. Now he's got 3 artifacts that he can target, so I can't get through. I can't hit the Ready, and he used 1 artifact to make 3, and then he can use those to make an unlimited number. So now I've got a bunch of counter spells in my hand, but there's a Duretti in play, which means that when I counterspell his artifacts, all I'm really doing is saying play them in another turn, because Dreddy's just going to put them to play for free anyway. Meanwhile, I did mana drain a Sphere of Resistance, and because I'm looking for a solution to Duretti and I cannot go get Pithing Needle, I go get Gilded Lotus, because I'm still playing under a Winter Orb. And I realize that he's got a disc in his graveyard, but what I'm trying to do is get the Lotus down, get the tutelage down, and then draw 3 cards and impulse 4 more, and look at 7 cards next turn and find a solution to his disc before I lose the game. So I do exactly that. Draw, draw, draw. Don't even find the land, which is the other thing I was hoping to hit. An impulse. I do find a land off impulse, and then I go ahead and play it, which means that after the disc goes off, I will have blue up, but it looks like I'm only going to have 5 mana next turn. Of course, it's enough to play Future Sight, so that's good. Now here's a kind of tech play. He attacks with 2 golems, and I decide that I'm not going to block with Confidant. Now, if he's planning to blow the disc on his turn, then not blocking here costs me 3 life. But if he's planning to make me untap my lands with the Winter Orb in play and then blow the disc, then not blocking here is +1 card in hand, and totally worth the 3 life that I took. So I chose not to block, because that's the better. Like if you do the matrix of all the possible things that could happen, the outcome of him not blocking, of him blowing the disc during my upkeep and me getting an extra card, is a lot high. It's a lot better for me than saving 3 life. Like if the right play was to block, I get punished by making the wrong play, and I lose 3 life when I didn't have to. But that's irrelevant. If the right play was to block, if the right play is not to block, and I blocked incorrectly, the punishment is I lose a card. So when you're contrasting, if I make the wrong call in one scenario, I lose 3 life. If I make the wrong call in another scenario, I lose a card. So what do? I make the choice that says, if this choice is wrong, it costs me 3 life. But I don't make the choice that says, if this choice is wrong, it costs me a card, because I never want to put a card at risk unnecessarily when I can just put 3 life at risk instead. As it turns out, I made the right choice. I get the card, and the card was land. It didn't even cost me. It cost me 3 life for not blocking, but it didn't cost me any extra life for Confidant. So I go ahead and play Talisman, and now my opponent's got 2 cards in hand and a Duretti, and I'm in a bad spot. And then he goes and casts a Mana Crypt. So I'm actually gonna. There's another decision point. I actually counter this, because if I can just keep artifacts off the table, then Duretti won't do anything. Of course, it's nearly impossible, since he most likely is playing artifact lands as well as, things like Mana Crypt. But I figure if I let the Mana Crypt go and then he plays another artifact, then I'm really sunk. But if I counter the Mana Crypt and his 2 cards, neither of them is a play. It could be non-artifact, or it could just be land, or it could be anything. Then countering the Crypt. Again, this is that decision tree. Like, what happens if I'm wrong? What happens if I counter the Crypt and I shouldn't have countered the Crypt? Well, then he plays an artifact and he activates Duretti and he gets what he wants. What happens if I'm wrong? What happens if I don't counter the Crypt and I'm wrong? Well, then he plays an artifact and he activates Duretti and he gets what he wants. Plus, he has a Mana Crypt. So clearly, I could be wrong either way, but I'd rather be wrong without the Mana Crypt on the board. So I counter it. Luckily, it turns out to be right yet again, because he actually pluses Duretti and throws away a 6-drop. Had I not countered the Crypt, he would have hardcast Wormcoil Engine, and then I would have, of course, countered that, and then he would have sacked Mana Crypt to put Wormcoil right back into play. You can't counter artifacts permanently when there's a Duretti out. From there, he would be able to sacrifice Wormcoil Engine to get something like Precursor Golem or whatever he wanted, and then that would produce multiple artifact creatures, which would then allow him to recur Wormcoil Engine basically indefinitely. So, countering Crypt was correct there, and I actually get to untap now, and I cast Merchant Scroll, and because I have a placeholder recoil in my deck, but I don't have Pithing Needle, and I couldn't go get the card I wanted, and which would have made this game a million times easier early, but I have recoil in my deck, and I fortunately have a handful of counterspells, so I recoil. I'm able to Merchant Scroll for recoil, which is a really nice thing. Bounce it, Killing a mountain in his hand. Oh, excuse me. And then I condescend for 2 so that he doesn't, if he has the red, if he has Simeon Spirit Guide, he won't be able to actually pay for Dreddy here. If I condescended for 1 and to not take a point of damage, he might have been able to pay for Dreddy with Simeon Spirit Guide. And since we know that the 2 cards in his hands weren't cheap artifacts, we know that it's possible one of the cards could be Simeon Spirit Guide. Anyway, regardless, I countered for 2, so that wasn't a threat, and I'm able to play a couple cards off the top of a Future Sight. The ready is gone, and at this point it's a matter of just wrapping it up with Future Sight. So he can't even recast ready because he has a Workshop and not Ancient Tomb. And I don't, why does that keep getting bigger? Alright, whatever. Anyway, so I fetch Wasteland here, and I'm playing some cards off the top. Mind Twist his hand. You know how this goes, right? We've got a Scroll Rack. Going to strip mine his land, copy my Talisman, and say go. He actually draws a Hedron Archive, which is a way to get more cards in his hand. But I activate Scroll Rack for 1, putting Deprive back, putting Will into my hand, and then casting Deprive off the top, picking up a land, which will be fuel for Forbid next turn. My opponent's got no cards in hand, and with all that going on, he concedes before I can even cast a Deprive. Had he not conceded, of course, what would have happened is this would have been countered, and then on my turn, I would have cast Will, and then I've got Soul Ring Vault. So I would have, he has an empty hand, so I would have cast Will, I would have played Wasteland, a bunch of artifact mana, Expedition Map. Wasteland kills Workshop, Map goes and fetches, Strip. I recast Recoil, killing another mountain, and then, of course, probably running through some of this through Guild Lotus. And then what I would have done is I would have cast Merchant Scroll for Mystical Tutor for Vindicate, and then Vindicate another mana out of existence. So at that point, because I could play Vindicate off the top of the Future Sight, so at that point, Wasteland kills this, Strip Mine kills this, Recoil kills this, Vindicate kills this, and he would have no cards in hand and no lands whatsoever against that board. Before we get there, though, my opponent scoops. So a placeholder card actually ends up working better than if it was the real thing, because I couldn't have fetched the real thing. And not having a card that I'm pretty sure I want to have in this deck ends up being quite painful that game. But through a series of correct plays, fortunately, I was able to get through it, and through a decent bit of luck. I was concerned at one point he might have Scrap Forge Mastery, but he never had it, and so we're good to go. What's going on here? I have one more game to show you, and then we're done with this video. So this game here, yeah, played with the same version of the deck. This is against Gashaman, and the reason this game was interesting is because not so much because of the outcome or how the game played. The game is interesting, I think, because I made a technically correct play with an immediate payoff, and it's one of those plays that you only make because you know, like, there's certain plays you make just because you've been around for a long time, and it's a very gratifying feeling when the decisions that cause you to make that play, which is just based on a lot of experience, when those decisions actually are proven to be correct. And I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about as soon as we get there. So I lead off. I have a great draw. This guy's playing Carador. I lead off with Soul Ring, and then follow that up with... I had to think here, do I want to brainstorm or do I want to counter my way to find lands? Well, I want to hit land drops now, so I do. I brainstorm, and then it's kind of weird how I have to put my lands back. I want to put a fetch land on top of... I put a fetch land on top of a remand here. And the reason is I don't want to... If I have to counter here, I want to condescend. But if I used a fetch land to do it, I would have to shuffle away the other card in my deck, and so I needed to put back one land for sure. So if I put back Wasteland and then I condescended off a fetch, I'd be shuffling the Wasteland away, and I didn't want to do that. So instead, I put Remand underneath of a doggone fetch land, and the reason is that I'm willing to force a will here if I have to, in order to draw the fetch land and then fetch and cast Gilded Lotus, Necropotence, and then off to the races. So Fortunately, I don't have to burn a force, so now I've got a force to protect Necro. So I'm going to go and shuffle away the remand, no big deal. I'm about to do much nastier things than sit on a remand. And we're going to draw 4 cards. And now I'm going to show you the technically correct play that I make. I think I'm going to show you. Now watch. Here. It's the end of my turn. I've seen what I've drawn off Necropotence, okay? But I haven't actually passed priority, so my turn is not over. It's still my turn. It's the end of my turn after Necro is resolved. And I look at my hand and I think, well, how many cards would I Necropotence for next turn based on what's in my hand? So if my opponent makes a play I need to force a will, I'm going to lose 2 cards. Then I'm going to play a land, a crypt, and a top. And so I'll need a total of 5 cards to refill my hand. So I'm going to start activating Necro right now. And I'll show you why this matters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I believe. 4. Right. Okay, so I did 4. And the reason I did 4 was that if he doesn't play a card that I need to force a will, then I'm going to go land, crypt, top, and then I'll Necro 4 cards into my hand, and I'll have 1 to discard the worst card, and then we're all set. So why did I do that right then? Well, the reason I did that right then is that the best thing, I have Force of Will protecting Necro, so there's no way for my opponent to kill this except with 1 of 2 cards. My opponent can have, in green-black, he can have Crows and Grip, which I can't respond to at all, or he could have Abrupt Decay, which I cannot counterspell. So if he's got 1 of those 2 cards, Necropotence is going to die here. So because of that, if he has Abrupt Decay though, then in response, I'm just going to activate Necro anyway, and it doesn't matter that I didn't pre-Necro. But if he has Crows and Grip, he would kill my Necropotence here, and I would not be able to respond. You can't even Necro in response. You just stare at it on the stack and let it resolve and do nothing. It's a horrible, frustrating mechanic. It kind of turns Magic into Hearthstone for a second. So if he had Crows and Grip here, I couldn't even Necro in response. I wouldn't have 4 cards exiled. So I played this because I figured out how many cards I was going to get for sure, set them aside. I'll get them next turn just like I normally would. But if my opponent has Crows and Grip, I get the cards versus not getting the cards. And look what happens. Okay. I go to cast Mana Crypt. Boom, Crows and Grip. He shouldn't have waited, of course. He gave me an opportunity to use Necro. That was foolish, but, you know, opponents can be foolish if they want to be. But I've got 4 cards coming to my hand anyway. So I play top, see Teferi, pop the top, slam the Teferi into play, untap the 4 artifacts that I used to do all that. Well, 3 in a land. And then I'm fixing from here to most likely cast my commander. I'm going to wasteland his green, source for green over there. And then I'm going to get 4 cards in my hand at the end of the turn, even though the Necropotence isn't in play. But at this point, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then with Teferi's ability, I can pick up an extra 8 mana. So at this point, I've got 19 mana into play, and I'm going to kill one of them. I'm going to go to 18 lands, 18 mana sources, and my opponent's going to have 2. I'm going to have a full hand. My opponent's got 4 cards in hand in a Skull Time. And because of that, he gives up, which makes perfect sense. But I just thought this was a good game to highlight one of those things that you ought to be doing when you're playing, that everyone should be doing. Should be thinking like, what can my opponent do, and what's the best way to deal with that? And particularly when you're facing green, one of the cards that you may hear it in my other videos. If you actually went back and reviewed my old videos, you'll hear me mention this card many times. I'll say, well, I'm playing this way because he might have Crows and Grip, or I'm doing this. Like, for example, let's say it's my opponent's upkeep, and I've put a Terminus on top of my deck with Imperial Seal, and I've got Sensei's Divining Top, and my opponent's playing green. And he untaps his mana, and he goes to his upkeep, and he passes priority. I might immediately activate Sensei's Divining Top and cast the Terminus, as opposed to as opposed to waiting for his combat step against a green player. Because if he has a lethal attack on the stack, if he has a lethal attack in play, and he has Crows and Grip, and he didn't play it before passing priority, the second I get priority, I need to use the top in that kind of situation. Or if I wait too long, he could draw for his draw phase, draw the Grip, target my top, kill it. I can't respond, and then I die from his attacking creatures. So you go back and look at old videos, and you'll think there's a number of times I mentioned this card. When you're playing against green, always, always, always consider that they could have it and what you're going to do about it. And if the answer is that playing around it is too painful, like if you say, well, I could play Moat here, but he might have Grip, but so I won't play Moat and I'll just let him beat my face in, well, it doesn't make any sense. But on the other hand, if you have Moat and say tutor, and you could tutor and go get Mind Twist and then twist his hand away and then play the Moat, and you'll be at a lower life total, but you'll be in a much safer position, well, then that might make sense. So always play around this card. Can't say it enough, but I can say it too much and annoy you, so I will not continue. I think you get the point. And I hope you enjoyed my video, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.